a lot of folks had requested after listening to the archery stuff that we do this for rifle season.
Yeah.
So the rifle seasons, I always break them out into post-rut for the most part, which is like October 12th to 15th-ish through about the end of the month. And then late season is anything. I always use like November, the first part of November when late season starts, but it's really not a time on the calendar. It's mostly when the bulls gather up again into bachelor groups.
And it's almost a weather event. Sometimes it triggers that the cows go into full-time feeding mode.
Yep.
The bulls come out of their hiding security sanctuaries and they start feeding, it seems like.
Yeah. So you can kind of use late October, early November for the transition from post-rut to late season. But the real indicator is when you start seeing groups of bulls, you know you're in late season.
Yeah.
Because in post-rut, they leave the cows and they go solo.
By themselves, the bigger bulls. You know, sometimes you'll see those younger bulls together, but those big bulls, and I'm excited to talk to you. Because I remember I called you 10 years ago and said, I'm taking Isaac rifle hunting and I don't have a clue how to find elk if they aren't bugling. What do I do? And I was thinking the same thing last week. Elk are so much easier to find when they bugle. Yeah. You just get on a ridge and bugle, and if one answers, you know he's there. If no elk answer, I assume there's no elk there and I move on.
Right.
Rifle season, you don't have that luxury.
No, you don't. And that's where, depending on where you're hunting in this post-rut period, when these bulls, the older bulls, leave the cows, they'll leave the raghorns and the 5 points to the cows. It's like, you know what? It's not worth getting killed over this, Many a good man has died of lead poisoning by hanging around these cows too long, and I don't want to be that guy.
Yep.
So depending on where you hunt, the tactics and strategies you employ are going to be different. And so a lot of what we'll talk about here are general ideas. Yeah. But really, really thick timber, say northern Idaho, northwest Montana, central Idaho, maybe parts of western Wyoming, post-rut elk hunting is difficult.
Yeah.
Because you can't see anything. And, okay, they could be anywhere in this big mass of dark timber. Your opportunities, your windows will be very, very low in the morning when they might still be out on the edge feeding, or they come out later in the evening, just that last 10, 15, 20 minutes. So it does make for good napping time because there's not a whole lot going on. Now, you get to places like southwest Montana, eastern Montana, eastern Wyoming, places where there's more open country, and it's just a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Places in Colorado. And then you get down to the southwest states, the four corner states of New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Nevada. Some of those elk aren't even migratory. So we can get into the migratory versus non-migratory thing in a little bit. But as a general rule, we're talking about elk that do some migration.
Yeah.
And this year, the September's been ridiculously warm. And if this continues,
it's 85 degrees today. It's September 28th today. Yeah. 85 degrees here in Bozeman.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so that complicates, as much as we talk about heat really messes up archery season with the full moon especially. Hot weather in the post-rut is so frustrating.
Yeah. Because
these bulls, they go bury themselves somewhere, and they have no reason to get up other than they just, if they like a sauna and want to sweat, they would get up.
But they don't.
They don't. So
let's back up just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about post-rut in this episode.
Yep.
October 10th, 12th, somewhere in there through the end of October.
Yep.
Opening day in a lot of states there's some units in Idaho that are October 10th for general season. Most of them, it's October 15th. Wyoming, most of Idaho.
Yep.
Montana is
always the last Saturday in October.
Yeah, so they're a little later. Mm-hmm. But most of what rifle over-the-counter general hunts is going to be mid-October.
Yeah. Colorado second season opened, I don't know, October 20-something this year. So, yeah.
So if somebody is choosing a time during the month of October to go, should they wait towards the end of October and hope to catch a little bit of the late season starting where the elk are starting to come out more? Or should they make sure they're there the day before opening day and capitalize on opening day?
Yeah, that's depends on how much time you have in your calendar. Opening day, a lot of elk get killed because the smart guys and gals come 2 or 3 days early and they're patterning these bulls. And they know, like, okay, I found this guy. He's living in this little pocket down here. I'm going to kill him opening morning.
Or you might catch the tail end of some rut activity and still get some bugling. And it seems like opening day, a lot of times in the morning, you'll hear bugles.
Yep.
The second day of season, it'll be silent out there. And the elk just know. Those gunshots go off, bugling season's over.
Yeah. So if you're coming in the first part of the post-rut period, I always say do your hunting before opening morning and do your killing opening morning. In other words, the time you're going to invest scouting and finding a bull, learning his pattern, and hopefully doesn't get messed up by some other hunters who are doing the same thing you are, because if they stumble into him, he's going to move. And so you're going to show up opening morning like, where'd he go? So it's a very effective tactic, but once the shooting starts, the whole deck of cards gets reshuffled.
Yep.
And so you got anywhere from a week to 10 days before they kind of start building and establishing another pattern that becomes a little more predictable. Yep. So I know a lot of people say, no, I got to be there on the 15th. It's where I put in for my vacation time. It's whatever. So if you do that, I would give up a day on the end of my hunt for an extra day of scouting and patterning an elk. And, these are public land bulls. These are highly pressured elk who they've already been called to for 6 weeks or maybe a month. They've smelled a lot of things. And if this is a 4.5 or older bull, he's
already survived 4 seasons or more.
Yeah.
And he knows the game that starts on October 15th.
Exactly. And so if you get a warm weather period like we're having right now, these in the hills, you got these migratory elk where the summer range is up high, winter range is down low. And in the post-rut and late season, they're going to be somewhere on that transition range between that takes them down from the summer range to the winter range. But when it's unseasonably warm, they're going to be way up high. And we always talk about how in September they go bed in the dark timber, usually on a north, northeast, northwest face. They're going to do the same thing when it's that hot. And you might have had, let's say, and I'll use an example. Like in Colorado, I had a tag that opened like October 15th or something like that. And it was hot weather like this. Well, it was long hike in there. It took us 8 or 9 hours with llamas to get in there, and we're going past camp after camp after camp. And then we got up really high and there was nobody there. And I shot a bull opening day, and then I come down and everyone's like, where'd you find that thing? And I'm like, way up there. And I'm like, man, we hunt here, 3 out of every 4 years, we get them. Well, the reason that is 3 out of every 4 years is probably a normal weather year, and those elk are down kind of where those guys were hunting. We were another 2,000 feet elevation above them. And that's where the elk were. There were ridiculous numbers of elk up there. But my point of all that is in this post-rut period, you're already dealing with highly pressured elk that are trying to recoup, trying to stay alive, a lot of hunting pressure. And then if you get warm weather, I don't want to encourage anyone to stay home and watch football because you might get, a honey-do list thrown on your lap. But that's...
And definitely don't watch football if you're a Vikings fan, right?
No, don't do that.
That's never
But then, to the other part of your question, if you get later in October, the weather's probably going to be cooler. You got a chance for maybe some of these bulls are saying, I got to start eating more. So they're going to be out a little later in the morning. They're going to come out a little earlier in the afternoon. And it is a glassing game. And I know, I hear it from guys up in northwest Montana or up in northern Idaho. They're like, it's not a glassing game for me because there's nothing, you can't glass. Well, that's very hard hunting. And they say, what would you do? I'm like, I go hunt somewhere else. That's what I usually tell them. And I say that kind of jokingly, but if you're in a situation like that, what's the accumulating factor? What is going to cause a bull to be somewhere on that day? And that's when we get into sanctuaries. People hear me talk about sanctuaries all the time. And a sanctuary can be many things, but I always say it is a area of low hunting pressure, either adjacent to or surrounded by an area of higher hunting pressure. Well, what creates higher hunting pressure and lower hunting pressure? Well, higher hunting pressure is closer to roads, access, trails, easy going, not that far away from a trail. Big chunks of public land where, don't got to worry about private boundaries, none of that. And then the inverse of that is what's a sanctuary then, or what creates low hunting pressure? Distance, topography, boundaries, like might be a state boundary, might be a unit boundary where it's a controlled hunt in one area and a general unit right next door. And a lot of people are like, I just don't want to hunt that boundary because, they're going to run over to that closed area. Could be a public-private boundary. It could be blow down and beetle kill. There's a lot of things that create lower hunting pressure. And it's usually the place where a hunter looks at it and says,
I don't want to go there.
I don't need an elk that bad. Yeah. Well, that group of hunters who year after year defy the 10 or 15% odds, and they get their bull on public land in general units every year, those are the guys and gals who have figured out where the other people don't want to go.
Yeah.
And that's, if there's one simple part to this whole post-rut period, it's go where other people don't want to go. And some people say, well, there's not much food there. There's not much water there. You're right. There usually aren't in these sanctuaries. Yep. But this bull has lived through enough season to say, well, I got 10 to 15 days here that if I can live through this, I got pretty smooth sailing. Yep. And so they have these places where year after year that they've learned from other elk and other bulls. All right, there's enough food there. I can get through. There's a little bit of water. I can go water 300 yards away in the dark, and I'm just going to stay here.
Yep. So they don't have to move very far at all for feed, water, and bedding.
Right.
They just aren't leaving tracks out there. So you have to know where they are. If you're glassing and are able to see that opening, you've got to watch it all day and just going to catch a glimpse first thing in the morning, last thing at night.
Yeah, that is really what it's going to be in this post-rut period. And that's why states like Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, why they can throw so much rifle hunting pressure out there in the post-rut.
Yep.
Because it's the hardest time in the entire year, the entire calendar season, to kill a bull elk on public land.